Hey everybody, Mike Naso here from IPR, taking a look at the tropics. Currently moving through the Lesser Antilles is what was once 96L, kind of splitting in two. First half of the wave kind of moving in this direction, and then the lower half, the more interesting half, moved through the southern Windward Islands yesterday and has now exited into the southeastern Caribbean Sea, and we're going to be taking a look at that momentarily. In fact, this is where we're going to start. Taking a look at the latest visible satellite image of this system. It's no longer an INVEST, but you can see right in there as the sun came up, there's still some spin to it if you use your imagination, but not much. It's in a area of wind shear that's just not favorable, but this is progressing and is persistent towards the west or west-northwest. And the northern half of this wave, watch this, but I don't think that's going to do anything. Although the system as a whole could very well just in general move to the west-northwest. But I think that what's going to happen is this northerly part is going to move more north, and this is going to move more south, and this will kind of fizzle. That's probably what we're going to be dealing with. But if it all moves in the same direction, remember Barry 2001, Tropical Storm Barry in Florida Panhandle, that formed from a wave very much like this, that just continued through, exited in the southeast Gulf, became a tropical storm. So we have to watch that very carefully. Now, when we take a look at what is undergoing right now with the shear tendency is still rather high in this area of the Caribbean Sea. We're dealing with shear in about the 30 to 40 knot range, which is not good for development moving in this general direction. The reason why that little piece down there is surviving, even though it's just a little thunderstorm activity, is because it's currently in an area of about 10 to 20 knots of shear, 10 to 15 knots. That's more favorable. Notice over most of the areas of Cuba and the eastern Gulf of Mexico and most of the Gulf with the upper level low there showing very favorable conditions for shear. And then up towards the Bahamas, at most 20 knots. So things in general are becoming more favorable. Also off the coast of Africa, you're starting to get it. And over our hurricane in the eastern Pacific, shear on the east side is favorable, but not on the west. And I'll tell you about that. That's why our hurricane's weakening. We'll get to that in a little bit. In general, though, things are going to get better for development. 6 days out, the Canadian is forecasting a system heading on up towards Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida Panhandle. This is associated with the wave in general as it moves up towards the west-northwest, so got to watch that. The NOGAPS is predicting a system as well near the Florida Keys, Dry Tortugas. This is in 6 days. Also another system in the eastern Pacific. This would be Hurricane Daniel. That's going to be developing, I'll tell you why. And another wave down here in the Caribbean, so activity continues. Now, the GFS, this is 5 days out. This is actually 6 days out. Notice we have some activity in the western Caribbean, some activity up here near the islands. But the biggest feature is a very organized area of low pressure that has developed off the coast of Africa, moving off the coast of Africa, probably near about, say, halfway between, that's 20 north, so probably about 12, 13, 14 north, moving to the west-northwest. Now that's 6 days. As we move towards 160 hours, that area is continuing to persist and strengthen. I know this is getting long range, but I'm still showing it anyway to show what is happening with it. System ends up moving towards the west-northwest, north of the islands. Is it going to turn? Look at this high pressure built in here, 1024 millibars. There is no way this system's getting through. This high pressure is built in way too far. And so what's going to happen? Is it going to turn back to the west? You betcha. There the system is. This is by, I think, about 200 hours or so, or 180 hours, bearing down on the Florida coastline. And then what happens to it? It ends up getting pushed into southeast Louisiana with a building area of high pressure as a tropical system, as another system forms over the Caribbean and off the coast of Africa. By this time, we're talking about, say, the 28th of July. I mean, we're getting towards August 1st. However, this is only, say a week and a half out, and they're showing a pretty well-organized tropical system taking a classical Cape Verde hurricane track. So we got to keep an eye on that. But right now, I don't think it's going to do anything because it hasn't even exited. Although right now, I mean, heck, this is about where the wave is coming off of Africa on the GFS, and we're watching that one carefully. This is showing some types of banding features. Will it persist? If it does, this could develop into our next system. We'll have to keep an eye on it. Elsewhere in the Atlantic, there's our wave system in the Gulf of Mexico. Some of the models were hinting yesterday and last couple of days that this would head up towards Texas. However, this upper level low, which is not a low level feature, so it will not develop, is creating some shearing. But is it possible that as this low retrogrades west into Mexico, that some of these showers will come up here, will merge with this, and maybe we'll get a system? It's possible, but right now I don't think so. Notice all this activity near the Eastern Pacific and near Costa Rica. That could very well end up developing a system in the Eastern Pacific that would become Daniel. So we'll have to watch that. Elsewhere, everything quiet in the Atlantic. Hurricane Bud, 115 miles an hour, peaked at 125, almost became a Category 4, gusting to 140, west-northwest at 17, 962 millibars. This hurricane should continue to weaken into a tropical storm by Friday night, and then over the weekend and in next week be deteriorating as it turns back towards the west towards 150. And then Hurricane Carlotta has also been weakening. It was 85 miles an hour and forecast to become a major hurricane. It's now down to 80 and it's forecast to continue to weaken over the next several days. It's moving west-northwest slower than Bud at 13, pressure 984. Now I'll tell you what's going on with this. First of all, there's Bud as the visible comes up. Still a well-defined eye, good banding, small hurricane, nevertheless strong, and a lot of good banding features with it. In contrast, there's Carlotta that you could clearly see there's the center of the hurricane right in there, but not as good banding features because it is being sheared by Bud. And you can see that even better on water vapor. Look at how cool this looks. Nice little pinwheel, but the flow around the hurricane Bud is basically a flow like this. Okay, you have Bud's outflow here, you have Carlotta's outflow here. Well, what's happening? Crisscross, they're hitting into each other, and that's why Carlotta's bursting instead of wrapping. It has no outer bands because they're all being sheared by Bud. Is it possible that as Bud kind of moves off towards the west, that Carlotta could strengthen a little bit? I think it is, but at this point it doesn't look like it. A lot of moisture in the region though, and a lot of things to watch in the Eastern Pacific as we'll have another system that'll develop and move in this direction in the next couple of days, I think. That'll probably become Hurricane Daniel. Tropical storm Belize strengthened up to 65 miles an hour, moving northwest at 12, impacting northern Taiwan and then into China. Not into China, into China. And you can see they're still having trouble getting that core established. Never could do that, but a little bit better on its northern side than it was yesterday, looking very good with the outflow. And so we'll keep an eye on Belize. That's the latest on the tropics. I'll see you next time.